myself, I'll to me. I'm the crowd who's out to change our history. I'll myself.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Hi, myself. I'm Austin Petersen, former presidential candidate for the Libertarian Party. Welcome to the podcast about the Nazis. Is it okay to punch a Nazi? And if it's okay to punch a Nazi, is it okay to punch a white male libertarian? We've got some really cool stories tonight on the Freedom Report podcast. I'm in a terrific mood tonight. I went to a really great event earlier with a friend of mine, and I've got a lot of really cool stories that I'm excited to share with you all tonight. Now, I saw this story in Reason magazine that someone had tweeted that if it's okay to punch a Nazi, then it must be okay to punch a white male libertarian. I've got it exactly as it's quoted. And then not only am I going to deconstruct that from a philosophical viewpoint, we're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to talk about some cool topics tonight. And I also have some dankity dank memes to share with you all tonight. But I've also got some really good educational information and some stuff that I think that my younger audience, my younger viewers, are really going to be interested in tonight. Some stuff that it's kind of arcane, some, as they would call it in the role-playing games on the internets that they play on the Xboxes. It's lore. It's libertarian lore, and it's some pretty sweet lore. It combines Batman and libertarianism, and I think you guys are really going to love it when I share it with you. But that's at the end of the show. First, we're going to talk about what fascism is. I'm going to read the story from Reason magazine about the graphic design artist and writer who posted the inflammatory tweet. Then I'm going to talk to you guys about the definition of fascism. I'm going to talk about how it ties in to the libertarian movement. Is there such a thing as libertarian Nazi? Did I just use that? Was that clickbait to get you guys in here? No. Oh, you guys know I would never clickbait you. I'm your boy. I'm your freedom ninja. I would never do that. But in terms of the knowledge that you're going to get tonight, you're going to get some very valuable knowledge, and we're also going to have a lot of fun. So why don't I just go ahead and get to the story, read it, and then we can get down to the punchline of all the topics which I have over here pulled up, which I'm going to share with you guys. Great stuff. Robbie Sove writes at the Hit and Run blog on Reason, now it's okay to punch Nazis and white male libertarians. That escalated quickly. Slippery slopes, sometimes very real. Well, that was fast. First, a black bloc protester punched alt-right figure and white nationalist sympathizer Richard Spencer during inauguration weekend, and some people defended this blatant exercise of violent censorship on the grounds that Spencer is a fascist, and as such should not enjoy his free speech right. The Nation's Natasha Leonard called it pure kinetic beauty. Some weeks later, protesters at the University of California, Berkeley smashed windows and set a large fire in order to prevent Milo Yiannopoulos from speaking on campus. Yiannopoulos is not as extreme as Spencer. He does not identify as a white nationalist or a member of the alt-right, but nevertheless holds a number of deplorable views and is closely associated with Breitbart and Trumpism. Again, the Black Bloc said that defending people from fascism requires Yiannopoulos to be silenced by the mob. The day after, similarly aligned people tried to prevent Gavin McInnes from speaking at New York University. And I just want to say right here before I finish this, I watched some videos from inauguration night, and I want to, let's call a spade here. But I saw Gavin McInnes, unsolicited, slap somebody in the face. So you can't, I don't want to see the Nazis trying to play like, and the alt-right fascists, and the ones who are all the super beta masculinity from the Alex Jones crowd. I don't want them to pretend like they were innocent, because I saw a lot of those assholes causing violence. It's not okay to do violence either way, but we'll get to that in a minute, and I'll finish this in just a sec. Today I couldn't help but notice this from Mike Monteiro, a design expert and occasional writer. He tweeted, this is Mike Monteiro, he tweeted, "It's okay to punch Nazis and white male libertarians who want to talk about free speech." Excuse me, did I hear your tweet right? Is he kidding? I can't tell, because no clarification was offered. Now, Reason Magazine contacted them, tweeted them. They did not respond. If it's a joke, at the very least, he thinks it's funny to entertain the idea. So how's that for goalpost shifting? First we say it's okay. First they came for the Nazis, right? And now they're coming for the libertarians. Then it becomes okay to punch people who say Nazis and Milo are bad, but we shouldn't punch them. Those slippery slope arguments people are always rolling their eyes at, well, this is a slippery slope. And we'll be normalizing a whole lot of violence as we slide. It's true. Meanwhile, the shutdown of Yiannopoulos at Berkeley was so wildly successful that conservative students have been cowed into silence. Just kidding. They're bringing Milo back to the back and Alex Jones. A super beta male prostate. Meanwhile, the shutdown of Yiannopoulos. I can do a good Alex Jones impression, just so you know. I'm not giving you the full springtime for Hitler tonight routine. All right, you're just getting the news and some cool stuff, which I'll get. We're going to be talking about Batman as soon as I finish this piece. So research shows that violent resistance is not the most effective tactic for stopping Trump, and it runs the risk of making the broader public more sympathetic to the kinds of bad policies the Trump administration would like to enact. Violence is the language that fascists understand best. Absolutely true. And Robbie Sove did a fantastic job talking about that piece. Now, moving on, I'll talk about the issues, the actual issues here. And I've got a meme for the occasion. Hallelujah. Aren't you guys excited? Now, if you haven't seen this meme yet, somebody posted this the other day where it said Austin Petersen involved in an altercation with alt-right servicemen. But I had originally posted this meme as Indiana Jones, just a local college professor in altercation with alt-right servicemen. So we're talking about the concept of legitimate violence, right? And there is a big difference between the laws of war and the laws of peace for a reason. Sometimes libertarians don't understand that because they think that what's good in war is good in peace, and that's just not the case, because the kind of planning that is involved in war is a separation from the laws of peace that we have, and there's for good reason, because if you're in war with a Nazi, then you have the right to punch a Nazi. If you're in civil society and the KKK is walking down the street, you do not have the legitimate right to walk up and punch the guy the moron in the KKK in the face. Now, believe me, I know Nazis. I've met a few of them. And when we're talking about Nazis and libertarians, they tend to be like oil and water. And I'm going to explain later on exactly why. I'm going to read the definition of fascism here. But here's the thing. The difference between the laws of war and the laws of peace are that if a Nazi is at war with you at war, then you can punch him in the face. If you are in peace, then somebody who just is a freaking fascist, which, you know what, there are a lot of fascists in the United States. Before World War II happened, there was a German-American Bund, and the Nazis protested, walked down the street of New York City, and then they had a huge rally in Madison Square Garden. Look it up. They were called the German-American Bund. There were a lot of Nazi sympathizers. And there still are Nazi sympathizers today. But like libertarianism, what has happened is that many times people who are fringe will try and attach themselves to other fringe movements in an effort to gain traction. And that's what we've seen with the alt-right and some of the real fascists and libertarians. They call themselves libertarians, but they're not. And it's just like when liberals say, oh, I'm a libertarian too. No, you're not. You're a friggin' commie. And I'd appreciate it if you would not try and sully my philosophy with your disgusting collectivist philosophy. And now let's define what is fascism. What is fascism? Fascism, Merriam-Webster Dictionary. This isn't even Wikipedia, folks. Okay, it's the Merriam-Webster. All right, somebody's like, Merriam-Webster was a fascist. Okay, the definition of fascism is a political philosophy, movement, or regime that exalts nation and often race above the individual, and that stands for a centralized, autocratic government headed by a dictatorial leader, severe economic and social regimentation, and forcible suppression of opposition. This is not libertarian. It has nothing to do with libertarianism. And despite the fact that you get a few confused morons out there who are fascists, who call themselves libertarians, that doesn't mean that Bernie Sanders is a card-carrying member of the Communist Party, okay? We all like to engage in hyperbole sometimes, and I'm guilty of it too. But when I'm using my logic, I know that it's not right to go and attack Richard Spencer and punch him in the face. You know, because here's the thing, I like to make the joke whenever my liberal friends do like to make light of it and say, oh, ha, 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 it's okay to punch a Nazi. I'm like, yeah, and commies too. You know, because America has a long history of kicking the ass of commies and fascists, and that is not what America stands for. You know, we went and fought a war, bloody war. What? How many? 250,000 Americans died in World War II to kick fascism's ass, but it took 60 years to beat the commies. The commies were a hell of a lot harder to kill. So, you know, you start talking about those things, and liberals don't like it. Oh yeah, don't punch a commie because that might mean that you're attacking the members of the Green Party. You know, so that's why we know that it's not that violence violence is never the answer. It doesn't solve anything, and it only gives your opposition the kind of legitimacy that they need. I mean, don't give them their Reichstag fire, Stop making martyrs out of these Nazis. And if a Nazi goes out on the attack, then we should go all WW2 on their ass. Grab me my M1 Garand and let's start kicking their ass. I'll climb the Atlantic seawall with you, and take out Erwin Rommel. They're out there. There are some Nazis. And there are some people who call themselves Nazis who hang in libertarian circles. And I'll just say this right now. I've been fighting them for years. I mean, these are the people who call themselves, and there's a lot of like edgy kids on Instagram who like to give me a hard time, like today, that's saying that things like, I bend over for the Jews and blah, blah, blah. So there is some anti-Semitic strains. Those are real Nazis. Those are fascists. And a lot of them came into the libertarian movement for a little while because they were turned on by the concepts of what they thought was isolationism. But libertarianism is not isolationism, and it has nothing to do with fascism. Fascism and Nazism actually helped develop the modern libertarian movement, the Austrian economics movement, because the leading lights of libertarianism fled fascism in Europe as Hitler was storming across Europe with his Wehrmacht. And I'm going to read to you actually a great story about Ludwig von Mises here tonight, and we're going to talk about the concepts of libertarianism from the way that it was formed because of how libertarians fled Europe because of fascism. I mean, modern day Keynesianism was actually born out of fascist economics. People don't know how fascism actually impacted the modern economic system, because people look at what happened with Hitler and they say, never again, never again. Well, that applies to economics as well. And libertarian economics, the modern form of the Austrian school, had nothing to do with fascism. As a matter of fact, they made a Batman comic book about it, and I'm going to show you guys some cool stuff about it here in just a moment. But let me make sure you understand, from the definition of fascism, it says here a centralized, right? Opposite of libertarians, right? Autocratic. Now, autocratic means total power to the government. That is so far from libertarianism that I don't even know what is. I think what happens is that these socialists and these lefties, they see anyone who's opposed to their system of total autocracy and a social democratic version of things, which is boom, bada boom, 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 boom. I have a meme for this. You're gonna love it. Ba, 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 and it's not coming up because it's a live show and there has to be something go wrong. That's your song. Something's going wrong. Gonna pull up the meme anyway so you can see it and we can have fun and talk about all the fun things that Algie P likes. Okay, here we go. Cha-cha. There it is. You can see it right there. This is a horrible way to introduce this into the show, but here you go. It's there anyway. It's the dragon. So check this out. So this is the sort of interesting. I shared this meme the other day. It was huge. It went so viral. Everybody loved it. It was all, and it's all about. It's all about like the difference between collectivism and individualism in a nerdy way that you know that I really enjoy. I like this kind of nerdy stuff. So yeah, so I'll put it up behind me here. So you have communism, and let's see, I'll move it up for you a little bit. Sorry, this is a little sloppy, guys, but that's what happens when you do this alone. Communism, you got social justice, whoop. We got social democracy. We have nationalism, which pissed off a lot of the alt-right. Too bad, bite me. Nazism, feudalism, and collectivism against my boy, individualism. Now, somebody actually shared a really cool one. I guess this is from like Magic the Gathering or something. But it had like Rand Paul here, Judge Napolitano here, Ron Paul over here, and we're all like casting a spell against the demon, like the Hydra, which is pretty sweet. But yes, so I hate to have to explain it to you guys this way, but sometimes this is the only way that I can try and get these concepts into people's head. We have individualism, right? The individual against these collectivist philosophies, right? This nationalism is a form of collectivism, whether you like it or not. We needs it, but we needs it. No, back off. Like, it's all about the individual, but not the nation state. The nation state is set to, the idea of the nationalism is that the nation comes first, before the individual. The nation state exists to serve the individual. That's why when they wrote the Declaration of Independence, the founders, they knew that this was a double-edged sword, that they needed a country, but that the country that could be altered, or the form of government could be altered or abolished. if it doesn't see fit to defend our life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, we all know that communism and the modern social justice war, which has become the movement, which has become a dangerous, cancerous movement, no longer about social justice, but about censorship and totalitarianism and Nazi, and of course, we have Nazism. Now, feudalism there's like 7 different definitions for that, and I don't really want to talk about feudalism because there aren't a whole lot of feudalist systems today. I think like the last major one died out from Japan. There's like, systems of feudalism that have occurred, but most of the best examples are from like medieval times, and I don't want to get into it. All right, but individualism, that's me right down there fighting the multi-headed hydra. So the thing is that when it comes to Nazism, it's not the same as libertarianism. And a lot of times what will happen is that like a lot of young kids will get into philosophy or they'll be in high school. And I see them on Instagram a lot. Like they'll post on there like very anti-Semitic things. And they're like, oh, I used to be a libertarian. I'm like, well, yeah, you're 16 years old. Of course, 2 months ago you were this and you were that. I saw that on my campaign. Like people would come in, like especially young people, they would support me. They would get really excited about the ideas. And then like 2 months later, they were like, oh my God, I hate this. Now I like this, And like, oh, all of a sudden I like Hitler, which makes no sense. But I mean, here's the thing. If you like a good social democrat, let's say Tulsi Gabbard, if you like a good social democrat like Dennis Kucinich, it doesn't then follow that you should then turn around and like Stalin or Mao or Pol Pot, right? Like there's a difference between Dennis Kucinich, who is a social democrat, and Pol Pot. Right? There is a difference. And we have to admit that. Because if we want to be intellectually honest and really criticize what's going on here, you're missing the freaking demon for the real good stuff, the paragon of virtue down here. This is the paladin of light, the holy warrior. That's individualism. That's what it's all about. That's what libertarianism is about. If you use any of these things, and nationalism is one thing, it can be a means to an end. You're not going to convince me that gassing a few million Jews is in the service of individualism. And, there are some people who, again, this is a very, very fringe, you know what I mean? There's no mainstream people out there who are like this, who are, tried and true Nazis who fall on the right side of the spectrum, right? They fall on the side of things where they have a more right-wing view of things, and they tend to be authoritarians. But they're still part of the beast, okay? So the holy warrior, the paladin, right here, who's got a +10 tinfoil hat against harp rays, is the good guy. And it doesn't matter how crazy the good guy may be in fighting what he's fighting, but if no one else stands for liberty, then I'll stand alone. And that's what this is all about. And I know I don't stand alone, because when I say that, I'm really trying to make the point that I'm willing to stand up against the odds. I've already shown that I've done it, and I will do it, and I'll do it again. But now let's talk about the fun stuff that the kids came here for. The Berlin Batman. I'm Batman. All right, so this is cool. You guys are going to love this. I'm actually going to read to you not only a little bit about the Berlin Batman, but then I'm going to read to you at the very end the story of Ludwig von Mises, who is the founder of the Austrian school, the story of their flight from Europe because of Hitler. Now, I can't read the whole letter from Ludwig von Mises' wife, but I'll read to you an excerpt of it and encourage you to follow up more and listen to it. I don't want to do the whole thing on the podcast because I'm going to bore the hell out of people. But anyways, so yeah, this stuff is live. What can I do? All right, so let's take a look. The Berlin Batman. All right, so this is the plot summary. The characters, of course, Baruch Wayne. He's a wealthy socialist cubist painter. Actually, you know what? I've got a cool meme that I can punch up here for you, too. Yeah, I don't care if you guys think this is childish. Like, this is the only way to get through to some people sometimes. Cool, I'll get rid of the dragon. It's gone. All right, cool. So this is the meme. It's really hard to see the picture there, but I'm just going to read it to you anyway so you can get a feel for it. But it's an episode of Batman Comics, and they're describing Berlin, Germany in the year 1938. And Baruch Wayne, Bruce Wayne, learns from his friend Commissar Garten that the police have confiscated the library, works, and notes of Austrian economist Ludwig von Mises due to his stance against the Nazi Party of policy of Adolf Hitler and the Third Reich. Unbeknownst to Garten, Baruch is actually the mysterious Batman who's been terrorizing the wealthy members of the Nazi Party. Years ago, when Baruch was still a child, he watched his Jewish parents get beaten to death by an anti-Semitic mob. From that point on, Baruch swore that he would avenge their deaths and spend the rest of his life on a war against all criminals and injustice. Now, the following is an excerpt from the unpublished memoirs of Baruch's assistant, Robin. Right? Ludwig von Mises escaped the United States when the Nazis ransacked his apartment in 1938. It's a true story. It was his landlady, a friend of his mother's, who told the authorities von Mises was working on a new book which challenged Nazi social and economic policies. They slowed him down, but they couldn't stop him. He continued work on a book which was eventually published in 1949 called Human Action, now considered one of the greatest libertarian works of our times. Von Mises's anti-authoritarian ideas were first a threat to the Nazis and then to the Soviets, and on to all increasingly regulatory governments in our times. He was against socialism in all its many forms. He was an advocate of individual liberty, free speech, and free thinking. And so, should I add, the Berlin Batman. The Batman, as we all know, got better at what he does, and the legends of his exploits continue to grow to this day. The Berlin Batman was published in 1998 by DC Comics, written and illustrated by Paul Pope. But that's pretty cool. I mean, Ludwig von Mises made it into a Batman comic, and the reason why is because they got to tell his story about his flight from Germany, which I'm going to read a small sample of now, and I'm going to share with you all. I see all you live chatters and all you dank memers and stuff in the live stream, dropping this article about Margit von Mises writing about how she convinced Ludwig von Mises to flee Europe. Now, the reason I bring this up is because libertarianism is the opposite of Nazism. It's not associated with it, and there are a few on the fringes who like to be like, oh yeah, I'm right wing, I'm libertarian, and then they're like, oh, but we gotta gas the Jews, and they're like, no. And I've actually met a few people at some of these conferences, and they're usually the people they kind of smell bad, and they've got like two poodles like coming out of their leather biker jacket, and they haven't shaved or like washed for a couple days. Every once in a while I'll meet like a really clean cut Nazi, and they'll have like, the Nazi cufflinks and stuff like that. They don't usually wear them in public, but it's like, I do go to like secret meetings sometimes. I'm not quite Bilderberg level. You guys know I'm only D-list. Alex Jones is gonna freak, but yeah, there are Nazis out there, and they call themselves libertarians, and they like some libertarian ideas because essentially they think that by ending central banking that we're getting rid of the Jewish banking cartel. And that's when you're like, ding, anti-Semite, and you're like, and you channel your inner Ludwig von Mises and your Friedrich von Hayek, and you, if you haven't read Friedrich von Hayek, Road to Serfdom, it was about Nazis, okay? So it makes me mad when people compare us to Nazis just because, a few nutcases will try and associate themselves with the fringe movement. It's like, a lot of people don't know this, but in the 1960s and 70s, William Buckley, the founder of the National Review, purged the conspiracy theorists from the conservative movement. And now a lot of those people are attached to our movement. And now a lot of those people have left our movement, and they have gone and joined the alt-right, they call themselves, right? These are the restrictionists, the real isolationists. People who attacked Ron Paul called him an isolationist, but he wasn't. And there were a lot of people who call themselves Nazis who claim they liked Ron Paul because he was against globalism. But the truth of the matter is that Ron Paul was not an isolationist. Ron Paul believed in free trade. Ron Paul has changed his stances on borders and on tariffs and things like that when it comes to... actually, you know what? Ron Paul never advocated for tariff that I ever heard of in raising taxes, because Ron Paul would never do that. But Ron Paul did take a strict border stance in the time. I think that he probably strengthened his rhetoric because he knew that the true isolationists would probably eat his lunch. And that's what they try and do to me every day. They're like, Austin, oh my God, you're not, like today I got like 2 or 3 posts from people who are like, yeah, Austin, you're like a servant of the Jews. Like, please, like I would be decked out much better than this, and I wouldn't have to like hawk make taxation theft again hats if I got the Jew gold. Sorry guys, I just happen to like Jews, and I think that anti-Semites suck. I'm not Jewish though, actually, so what can I say? Anyways, let's read about the escape from Europe. This is a really cool story. Margit von Mises wrote, when Hitler invaded the Netherlands on May 10th, 1940, I really became frightened. I had to talk to that's Ludwig von Mises. He did not want to leave. He had never been so happy as he was in Geneva, and he did not feel any fear. I reminded him of the night the Nazis came to Vienna. I told him the Nazis would never take him off their blacklist. I begged him, I implored him to leave, to think of me, if he would not think of himself. It took the breakdown of the Maginot Line, the occupation of Paris on June 14th, and the raising of the German swastika on the highest point of the Eiffel Tower to make Lou aware of the danger. Finally, he gave in and promised to make the necessary preparations for us to leave for the United States. Oh yeah, and if we had built the wall then and we didn't allow immigrants in, then modern libertarianism in the United States might not even friggin' exist. In his heart, of course, Lou was reluctant to leave, not only because of his love for the work at the Institute, because he feared how America, the home of young people, the paradise of youth, would receive him, a man of almost 60. He was also afraid of language difficulties. At that time, he was more at ease with French than English. He had studied French for at least 6 years in the academic gymnasium, and he spoke it fluently with almost no accent. The change of languages was difficult, and then from the moment German troops moved into France, every line of communication between Switzerland and that country was closed. Starting June 11th, no cars were allowed, no trains were running, no planes were flying, no buses were moving, no letters or telegrams came through. This was another source of worry. I knew we would not hear from their family member, and in no case could we manage to get her on her visa to take her with us. She would have to stay, where we had a few months before to study at the university. Anyways, so I don't want to read the whole thing here, but it's a fascinating story. And modern Austrian economics grew as a result of the critique of Nazi economics, of fascist economics. And it's wrong to think that you can't be that you have to be right-wing to be a fascist. There's a lot of left-wing fascists. I mean, the type of people like Winston Churchill famously said that the fascists of the future will be called anti-fascists. And that's true. Look what the anti-fascists are. They're rioting, they're burning, they're shutting down free speech. So you don't have to be right-wing to be a fascist. Now, generally, the types of people who are communists are left-wing, but there are a lot of conservative communists. I mean, there's a lot of overlap in philosophical viewpoints and opinions. So you can be a you can be a socially liberal, fiscally conservative. You can be socially conservative, fiscally liberal, like an FDR Democrat who's a Christian, right? And so that's why I think it's a mistake to group the philosophies of individualism in with the philosophies of collectivism. It's wrong. So that's why the anti-fascists who despise individualism are going to try and make the jump to, and not only is it okay to punch the Nazis, who are our kissing cousins here on the Beast of the Hydra, but we're also going to attack the individualists, the paladins, the heroes, the warrior monks, the people like you and me, the freedom fighters who are watching this podcast tonight. Did you enjoy the show, ladies and gentlemen? Awesome stuff, right? Do me a favor. If you like it, share it with your friends. Tweet it. If you're watching us later on Facebook, do me a favor. Share the live stream out on your feed. Help us to spread the message of economic freedom and personal liberty. So the answer to the question, ladies and gentlemen, is it okay to punch a Nazi? Is it okay to punch a libertarian? Answer is no. Don't use force. Don't aggress upon people if they've not aggressed upon you. Seems pretty. Don't hurt people. Don't take their stuff. If you're at war, that's a different story, and that's for another podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, the Freedom Report podcast is brought to you by thelibertarianrepublic.com. Check out the Libertarian Republic, your home for economic freedom and personal liberty. And coming back over here, libertyviral.com. What do you think? You guys like this hat? Get your hat at threadsofliberty.com. If you want to get your cool hat, you can get it also in, large. We've got a lot of people that are I guess there's a lot of chubbies, a lot of tubby libertarians. So I was like, do you have it in extra large? Yes, we do have your shirt at extra, extra large. Now go get on a diet. We need more libertarians. Don't have heart attacks at 40 years old, guys. Get out of your mama's basements. Go for a jog. Go for a run. Practice your sweet nunchuck skills and your ninja skills, all right? You want to be that level 10 warrior monk paladin? You're going to have to train, my monkeys. All right. Thanks a lot for watching the show tonight, guys. And don't forget, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday on YouTube, youtube.com/AugieP. I'll be in D.C. next week. Probably not going to be on the regular schedule, but you will get some cool, exclusive insight content, probably some interviews at CPAC while I'm there. You get to see some famous names and faces, and you get to see Augie P doing his thing out on the dance floor, raising money, kicking ass, taking names. Have a great night, folks. Stay free.